Okay, recording started.
Let's go. Okay, super big thank you for everyone jumping on a random Thursday, just prior to a mega week of Grampians, which is exciting. So look, some of you are seasoned GPT experts, and some of you are new to the GPT. So what I'd like to do is just give you all a bit of a general introduction in the first instance. Now, if for those that aren't on mute, if you can try and put yourself on mute for a little bit, otherwise I will throw the briefing over to you guys. But yeah, look, by way of general introduction, in terms of the team, so we've got there's quite a few different people involved on tonight's chat. There's members of the core single track team. So that's myself, Joe, Nigel, Tiffany. We've also got an extensive amount of folk here from the single track crew, which is the freshly minted GPT crew that are going to be playing a lot of team leader roles over the course of the GPT week. And then we've got an enormous contribution of the broader GPT volunteer team, which is amazing, playing a huge variety of roles. So there's quite a dynamic group of people on the call this evening. But what we'll try and do is cover some ground. We'll do so as in summaries as possible, but also want to make sure anyone's questions are answered. So to give a bit of an introduction onto the GPT itself, so the event guide has been circulated out. So I think that's your source of truth. That's a really good body of information and knowledge. There's not many questions that will remain unanswered once you've absorbed the detail of that guide. So I would encourage everyone to invest some time to look at that. If you haven't received it via email, it will be on the both on socials and also on the website that you can download and have a look at. So yeah, I'd encourage that. But look, I'll cover off a general flavour of it. Wednesday is when it all kicks off. So 9 o'clock, there'll be a shakeout run, and then we proceed straight into the registrations. So there'll be registrations and mandatory gear checks throughout the day on Wednesday, specifically for the 50K and the stage race runners only. Then at 3 o'clock, we've got the opening ceremony. So importantly, what we will be doing is bringing the entire of the registrations and the check-in procedures down to a close so that we can all focus on that opening ceremony. And then it will reopen after that, but after the elite panel has happened. So we go from a 3 o'clock opening ceremony into elite panel, and then into a briefing, and then the registrations will resume to be pushed through for a little late session. I think it's from a 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. session in the evening. 6 to 8 on the Wednesday. We've then got on the Thursday. That's the commencement of the actual 50K race itself, and also day 1 of the 4-day stage race. And then concurrent with that, we'll have registrations, mandatory gear checks for the 100-mile participants, and a similar sort of arrangement. We'll have an elite panel, we'll have a briefing, and then that we'll be pushing through fairly late on that Thursday, waiting for the final 50K finishes. That miler will then be starting on Friday morning. We're bringing forward the starting time, so that'll be 8 a.m. So there will be a fair bit of concurrent activity happening because the 100-mile race will be starting up at Mount Zero, whilst a couple of hours earlier, the stage race is starting in Halls Gap, running their way down to up to Mount William. So Friday will be quite a dynamic day, and then that dynamic will continue pushing all the way through to Sunday, which is exciting. So look, what we'll do is in terms of roles, and I suppose I'd like to really specifically welcome Julia as a party to the meeting here. Julie is central to the volunteer coordination over the weekend. So there'll be a lot of information and traffic that will flow through her hands and mind. So she'll be quite the centre of a lot of activity. But look, if you see any of us around and you've got any questions, don't hesitate asking. There's no question that's not valuable. So yeah, we want everyone to have some good clarity around what roles they're performing. For what I'd like to do is just cover off. There's quite a dynamic list of different roles. So there's a pile of people here that will be playing roles in terms of the registration and mandatory gear check procedures. There will also be people playing the role of drop bags. There's marshals, there's aid station personnel, shuttle drivers, and then there's also crew and various other setup and pack up support functions. So probably what I'd like to do is just throw it to Joe for a little bit for him to explain. There's a couple of changes this year in terms of how some of you will be getting to your location, so to make it convenient and also take some vehicles off the road.
Yeah, so GAR, so Mount Zero, GAR, and Mount Difficult Road. So that's for like the first three, I guess. Yeah, that's sort of the same spot though. So those 3 points are obviously like pretty high traffic areas and limited parking. So we want to basically group all the volunteers into one 12-seater for each of those locations. And Ridgeline Waterpoint also accesses that spot from Mount Difficult Road, which again is like a very limited parking area. So those Ridgeline people are all going to travel up together to Ridgeline, and all of the Mount Zero people are going to travel on a 12-seater to Mount Zero and then around to GAR. And then all of the GAR people are going to do the same. They're all going to go out together in a 12-seater to GAR, do everything out there, pack it all up, come back to GAR in the same 12-seater, and the same function for Mount Difficult Road. So those are the only, well, I guess 4 aid stations, including Ridgeline, that would do that. And then further south, from Halls Gap South, there's enough parking and way fewer roles actually from Rosier South per aid station, like way fewer volunteers that driving yourselves there. Carpooling's still great, but it's not essential, and like you can just get yourselves to each of those aid stations further south of Rosier, and you will have to get yourselves to those aid stations further south of Rosier. So Halls Gap's a no-brainer. It's most of you would probably be staying in Halls Gap, but from Rosier south, you'll have to organize your own transport. The one little, I guess, detail in there is obviously Mount William Road is closed to the public. And so we are going to figure out a system of being able to access the gate down the bottom with Parks Victoria. And yeah, you'll still have to get yourselves up to Mount William, but we'll have to probably brief you separately on exactly the process to get through that gate when we figured it out with them. And another important point to note on that is that from Rosier South, actually from Halls Gap South, every start time on your schedule is when we want you to be at the location. So if it says that you are supposed to be at, I don't know, say Rosier at 6 a.m. Yeah, we want you to be at Rosier at 6 a.m. That's not, we don't want you to show up in Halls Gap at 6 a.m. and ask us where to go. Yeah, those aid stations further south are all in position at those times. GAR, Mount Zero, and Mount Difficult and Ridgeline, those times on your schedule are also the times that you're supposed to be in position, but we're going to have to brief you on when to be at Halls Gap Information Center to catch that shuttle. We've got specific emails going out with more like detail on each specific role. That'll probably go out when they're ready, which I'm guessing would be over the weekend or Monday. So that'll have in that email when we want you to be waiting outside the hall, basically, to be picked up, to go to say GAR or yeah, one of those 4 locations. So yeah, that's the detail on those. Yeah.
So to and yeah, again, just a reminder for everyone, we will take questions at the end, so we welcome that. So build them up or chuck them in the chat, and we'll refer to them systematically through at the end. So look, what I want to try and do is just share with everyone a couple of specifics around some of the roles. So in Halls Gap, there's an abundance of people allocated to aid station roles that on your slot or your shift slot, it'll be named aid station or finisher, as well as marshal point. So what that means is there's going to be a rotational arrangement whereby you will be actively rotating between playing the role at the Halls Gap precinct, as well as some course marshal positions in close proximity to the Halls Gap town centre. And that way there's a nice rotation, there's a good energy transfer. Otherwise, sometimes those course marshal shifts are quite challenging. And also we just want to keep that energy high and that engagement high, and share also the opportunity of the vibe and the energy in the main hub of Halls Gap. So that'll be an important rotational arrangement to know, acknowledge, and support, because that's an important difference that we haven't done so far in the past. So that's an explanation of one point. At aid stations, there's always an average of 2 people allocated for the functional role of the setup and the pack up. So there'll be very few occasions. Some of you are on that list, but otherwise there'll be a lot of occasions where your start of your shift will actually coincide with when that setup is well and truly progressed or completed. What we're aiming to do is just make sure that all of our aid stations are dynamic aid stations. And what that means is we really want to try and make sure that we are in front of tables, helping the participants come through and helping them achieve what they need to achieve at that aid station and carry on, rather than necessarily behind the table function and having them sort their own stuff out. We like to be a little bit proactive there. So the aid stations will typically comprise a few tents. Some of them 2 tents, some of them 3 tents. In the case of, say, GAR, because that's quite a popular one, there's going to be about 8 tents in total. So what that's going to translate to is there's going to be an area for water. There's going to be an area for electrolyte, an area for glucose, such as gels and lollies. There's also going to be an area for savouries, such as chips. And then also some fresh produce like the watermelons and the bananas and the like. And then a variety of different beverages between Coke and ginger beer. With electrolyte, what's important is I'd like to encourage at an aid station for there to be some select people that really own the mixing of the electrolyte, so we get a very consistent mix of the product. And what I'd also like to encourage is no one to ever mix it inside the large dispensing drum. Always do it from the jugs. And you can keep a number of jugs pre-mixed and ready to roll. And that way we're never sort of running behind that. But it's important to just always follow those mixing instructions, which there's a 1 cup of solution into the jug that's part of powder, into the jug that's all part of the aid station kit. And that's an important item. With ice, look, the forecasts are looking very favorable, looking beautiful, but there still will be, a functional role for ice. Maybe not as much of the 700 odd bags that we went through last year. What with ice, what we want to try and do is achieve two dynamically different formats of ice. And it was a big learning curve for a lot of people last year. As on the aid stations, there's two different formats. One is an ice slushy, and one is a dry ice mix. And the dry ice goes into the bandanas and other sort of formats. That's the stuff that we don't want to have any connection with water. And then the other is the ice slushy mix, and that's where we just have this really thick, really cold sort of mixture of the ice and water. We want to keep both of those environments really clean. So there's two really important functions of how to keep it clean. One is when you're actually crushing up the ice while it's still in the bag, try to do so on a clean surface. Fortunately, Grampians is full of rocks, so rocks is the perfect thing. Try to avoid ever doing it down on the ground where it's gravel or sandy or dirty, because that will straight away contaminate the ice mixes. But the other thing, from a disinfection transfer, we want to make sure that people aren't mixing their own stuff. So it's no people coming along and dumping their own ice bandanas in them or hats in them and things like that. That's why we've got jugs, and that's also why we've got sponges, because we can take that, we can take it to the person and make sure that we don't, just don't impact the integrity of those ice mixes. There'll be some of us flowing around all the aid stations to give any sort of guiding sort of tips on it, but hopefully that's all made sense, and there's a fair few people here that are well embedded on all of that. We've got plenty of produce, so we've got plenty to go around. We've got our calculations pretty bang on, so we won't be short on anything. But look, what we do ask is, when you do identify, or if you do identify that we're short on something, raise it early, because then we know we can do something about it. In most cases, it'll be not faster than about an hour and a half turnaround to actually create a response and a solution. We've got that built into roles. If Mark Hanbrook's on the line here, he knows his role. So we'll be having people buzz around with fuel, with gas, with produce, with fruit, to deal with any sort of necessary top-ups at different aid stations as the event evolves.
And like probably 30 to 40% of the time, we deliver it and then we see there's another box hidden somewhere. So like triple check that there isn't just heaps of it left in the van somewhere or under the table, because often there is like a whole box of gels that you haven't seen. Yeah.
Look, so that's the aid station. So again, if there's anything missed there, let us know. There's some aid stations we've got sleeping arrangements catered for, and so there are stretcher beds allocated for those occasions. We've got walls for those tents provided, so that way we can create a bit of a space. We've also got blankets catered for them. We don't have a blanket for just everyone, but there's about 15 odd blankets allocated per sleeping aid station. So trying to keep them in a clean, orderly state is helpful. There's also some aid stations that are drop bag aid stations. So again, we've got tent space allocated to store drop bags. We've got tables allocated to put drop bags on top of. So yeah, we've got the spaces covered, and the places for things to happen.
And have a look in the event guide on the tables, and you'll see if your aid station is a drop bag or a sleeping point.
Yep.
One thing I want to just mention here as well, we're doing random gear checks as well for the miler at Halls Gap, Mount William, and Griffin Fire Line. We'll decide one piece of gear to check at each of those aid stations. Every single aid station will have a full list of all the runners and their phone numbers and their bib numbers. And so at those 3 aid stations, you'll just tick next to that runner that you've checked their raincoat, for example, if it is a raincoat. And also, we'll for the 50K as well, we'll either check, so the stage one, we'll either check it at the finish line or amount difficult, but I haven't really decided that yet, to be honest. If we think it's feasible to do it Mount Difficult, I prefer it, but it depends how hectic that environment becomes. It might be easier to do it at the finish line, but that'll be in the specific instructions that we email out. So yeah, random gear checks will be a thing during the races, basically. Yeah.
Some other big roles that are featured throughout the program are shuttle drivers. So, and we've made a heck of a job for ourselves here because there's so many shuttle drivers and so many shuttles in operation. So we will need everyone's help on that to really bear with us on a few things because there's a lot of different movements. The context there is for parks. This is one of the most important things. We need to try and keep as much traffic off the roads as practically possible. It's safer and it's better. It's a long stretch between locations. It can get if the conditions are gnarly, it's just safer to try and keep as many cars off the roads as possible. Additionally, there's a few aid stations that have become no crew vehicle access. There's special conditions exclusively for participants that are in the stage races and the stage race relays, or some occasions for paces. That information is in the event guide. That information will be made available for you as part of that, the communications. But it's really important. We've got a heck of a lot of shuttles moving around. If you are on one of those shuttle roles, please do your best to try and be as bang on with those times as possible. If you do find yourself in a state where you're feeling tired, just put your hand up. There's no judgment on it, because what we need is participant and crew safety at paramount. So if there's either a driving condition that you're just not feeling comfortable with, or you are feeling tired, please just speak up. We do need to keep they're very, very vital and important roles that's playing. We've also got somebody that's got their specific task to manage the fuel levels. It's important that we all be really cognizant of coming around to that 7 p.m. on the Friday night, 7 p.m. on the Saturday night, to not drive ourselves in deeper past into that evening without ensuring the fuel levels on the vehicles are bang on. Because we pulled a favour 2 years ago to wake up the fuel station guy. We probably don't want to try and form a bit of a reputation of being those people. So let's just try and watch the fuel levels. We've got someone tasked with that. But if something happens and there's a few we just ask for other people to sort of have that in the mindset as well. Crew and yard help. There's various people that have put their hands up to help in the setup, the pack up, and then also over the course of the weekend, particularly the Saturday afternoon and the Sunday, where we'll have a lot of concurrent event implementation and aid station support and marshal support, as well as unloading of vans, cleaning up the produce, reorganising produce ready to go out again, or reorganising some materials ready for packing in vans and trucks. Again, every role is enormously important. Every role is enormously valued. We're going to have a chap, Jason Townsend, and also another fella, Ryan Alexander, being quite anchors in our yard in the days leading up, and also over the Sunday and the Monday. But again, anything you can do to contribute to keeping things segmented neatly in our yard, chairs over there and generators over there and stoves over there, it helps with the flow and the efficiencies of how the events roll out. So I think in general, we'll throw it over to some questions, and hopefully you've got some questions now. Probably meals we've got. We've got a sandwich bar that will be active in Stony Creek Lodge. Each lunch over the course of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. For those working down in Dunkeld on the Saturday and Sunday, we've got some salad rolls and things like that prepared for down there. Outside of that, I just ask for everyone to just adequately prepare for, taking some food and other things and making sure you look after yourselves. If you don't look after yourselves, it's hard to look after others. So do that. But know that there's a well catered for salad bar at Camp Stony Creek Lodge, formerly Camp Acacia, on each of those lunches. I'll throw it to Julie.
Thanks, Colin. Just a couple of reminders. If any of the volunteers are actually running in the miler, and they're volunteering on the Thursday, they can pick up their bib on Wednesday, even though the Wednesday's only just for the stage race and the 50K. We will be able to sneak you in to do that. And the sweeps will also need mandatory gear. So just check the mandatory gear list and just bring everything that could be needed. I think you covered the other questions that I had, so that's good.
Joe's got a question of where you get your background, but we'll take that offline because that's amazing.
That's my photo from camp.
So good, so good. And Greg, thank you very much for that insider's tip. And actually, Greg, you've actually just prompted me on something that we'll share with everyone here. And I'll just check whether we're allowed. Greg and Nicole Q, they will be featuring prominently as part of a film production for the Backroads TV show. Oh, yeah. So anyone that is on the as part of the volunteer crew across any of the aid stations or anywhere along the course, any good quality content of them enjoying their 100-mile participation as miler pairs, we will be welcoming that content, sharing that content, and that's amazing stuff. So anything you can do there is great. There's also Sally Beggs will be featuring prominently. So some local heroes featuring prominently, but the TV show will be here pretty much all week, covering a lot of material across the GPT week. So we don't only have international icons, we've got TV shows. So this is exciting.
Here we go. We got a question. Beck and Luke. Hi, should we check in when we arrive in Halls Gap or just rock up to our volunteer shift at specified time and go from there? Julie, you're probably a good one to answer
that. Probably depends on what your role is and whereabouts you're located.
I would encourage you to come into Halls Gap or try to organise with Julie for you to get your T-shirt or uniform and anything like that taken with somebody else up to your spot. If, say, for instance, you're from Stawell and you're going up to straight over to Mount Zero, for instance. Yeah. But I think get part of the energy, get amongst Halls Gap. It's amazing.
Yeah. When, Julie, you'll be basically around the village from when until when to pick up volunteer shirts and stuff like that?
At this stage, I'll be there most of the time.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah. So, but that's from Wednesday onwards, really?
Wednesday onwards in a 24-hour rotation. Yeah. Look, there'll always be somebody. There's a period where Halls Gap does quieten down, but there's it's pretty much an always-on sort of state of play. There's a but look, we'll have an active WhatsApp. So if anyone's coming into town or you're an hour away and you want to clarify where you should go, don't feel uncomfortable about asking that question and pointing it, and we can respond. In terms of overnight shifts, look, what you will need is probably certainly a puffer jacket. In terms of high vis vest, no, outside of we've got high vis vests in circulation. We can give you one. Course marshal roles, yes. Aid station personnel, no. That we've got lights and things like that situated at all the aid stations. So we've got strip lights and also stand lights. So it's not a mandatory thing. But if it's part of your whole style and everything about it,
it'd help you stand out.
Yeah,
it's not a bad thing.
Yeah. What if we are volunteering at Dunkeld Land and not going into Halls Gap? Yeah, so what we'll have there is we'll have an abundance of shirts and uniforms and things like that will be allocating from Dunkeld. So one of the things we'll work through with Julie on is a little bit of a split between that gear. So that way we can make that communication crystal clear as to which location for you to collect collect the gear, because there is a fair bit of stuff happening down south of Dunkeld. Any other questions? Display of thumbs up if it's actually been helpful. Display of thumbs down if it's just you wish you did something else the last 40 minutes of your time.
We got another question. So we want to know about incident report process, volley and participant, medical emergency, who do we call? So I guess it depends where you are. If you're at an aid station, we should have probably mentioned every single aid station has two medical staff there the entire time. One will be sleeping or chilling out, and one will be on shift, and they will just be rotating however many hours their medical roster requires them to. So anything medical related, we don't want the volunteers really dealing with that, because it's not what you're there for. You can certainly help runners if they're tired or they just need some general care, but there'll be medical at every aid station, and they will be doing their own incident reports and stuff like that. So yeah, and we should mention obviously anything that is related to a participant and you need to contact the group, and in WhatsApp or direct to me or Colin or Nigel, who's our stage race director. We always want to know your bib number, the bib number of the person. We don't really care about their name so much. So yeah, it's hard to remember to do that. But if a runner comes up to you, you want to be looking at their bib number and not really caring about their name so much.
Raised a good point regarding a few things there. So roles. So Joe is the race director for the 100-mile event. Nigel Preston, who a lot of you do know, who hasn't been fortunate enough to be at GPT so far, because it's typically clashed with another key event that he runs. He will be the race director this year for the 50-kilometre and the 4-day stage race. That's really good, because that's added an enormous new boost of capability and capacity to really give both different races separate and specialized focus. I'll be focused on the stuff out in the field, whether it's aid stations or back of the yard in the operations, working with and a number of different folk. Tiffany, who a lot of you also know, she's got her hands and fingerprints on a lot of the stuff that's happening at the precincts, both at primarily at Halls Gap, but also a lot of our specifics in terms of vehicular movements. So a key thing that we've implemented this year is way more vehicles, but that requires way more administration and documentation around that. So inside each vehicle, it will have a daily run sheet of that vehicle, where that should be and where that shouldn't. So if you're ready to jump in a vehicle, don't please jump in any vehicle. Please take the vehicle that you're specified to jump in, and make sure that it's where it should be, because it's like a running sort of program of where that vehicle should be on the Wednesday, on the Thursday, on the Friday, because some vehicles have a very dynamic life over the course of the week. So I think if you can, please give some attention to that.
We've got a few questions rolling in as well. So if you have any questions about accommodation for Stony Creek Lodge, should they just email Tiffany about that?
Yeah. So I'll put the put an email in the chat here.
Yeah, it's just tiffany@singletrack.com.au. Pretty easy to remember. She's managing all of our accommodation for anyone who's, basically anyone who's anyone. Really.
Yeah. So look, we part of the call out for the single track crew, who are those that are contributing. There's circa 30 to 35 hours over the course of the week. That's who we've allocated the accommodation and meals program to. And some very select others that are doing some fairly grisly, gnarly shifts or doing some really funky sort of shuttle programs and things like that. So, look, hopefully, we're not stingers, but also we don't have a bottomless pit of rooms and beds. We're well over exhausted. So there's a fair bit of floor sleeping going on and things like that. So I think if there is a gap and you do have a need, don't hesitate reaching out, but also just try not to be offended if we can't help, but we'll at least try to steer you in a direction.
I'll go through some quick ones now. Like mobile reception is probably better on the course than it is at a lot of the aid stations. The Telstra works pretty good now, a lot of the course, but yeah, certainly black spots around Burrow Huts specifically is quite bad. And then other aid stations, it's patchy. We have a Starlink at every aid station, so we got and they actually worked really well last year for just WhatsApp messaging. I'm sure if you tried to watch Netflix, it probably wouldn't be amazing, but you can, like, they're definitely powerful enough. Last year we had no problems with just simple Wi-Fi calling and Wi-Fi messaging. Call people through the WhatsApp app will just ensure that you're using Wi-Fi, and it'll just work better than trying to call them through phone app while you're at an aid station. Well, you're allowed to log into the Starlink while you're at the location. I will actually just write in the chat now the password, but you're probably all going to remember it. It's just single track Starlink, and it's capital S, capital T, capital S. So single track Starlink. That is how you log in. It's pretty straightforward. We have two people who are just in charge of setting up all the Starlinks along the route. So people in this chat, unless you're Jordan or Ange, don't need to really worry about it.
That's Jordan, Dennis, and Ange Wagland.
They'll just be set up either while you're there, they'll arrive and set it up, or it'll already be there and set up. So you don't need to worry about that. There may be some troubleshooting, but Starlinks are pretty well designed that if it stops working, all you need to do is plug it back in or get the generator started again.
Trent Robbins, straight to the top of the class, offering to do some more shifts. There's a few people sitting at the top of the class at the moment, to be honest, so that's good. But Trent and anyone on this group, if there's any more gaps that you have in your time and you're willing to contribute, the iVolunteer system is still hungry for a few more hands in a few more spots. So that we will be continuing sort of fresh call outs for that. So look, we welcome it, invite it, and we're enormously grateful for it.
Can I also just say that if there's a full shift that you can't do, you might be able to do part of a shift. Let me know, because I'm sure that we can squeeze you in. Even if it's half a shift, it's better than nothing. Would be great.
Yeah. I'll just quickly answer a few. So we'll let you know about mandatory refills of water. They've got 3 liters capacity. If it's going to be at all hot, that'll definitely be a mandatory refill at least Gar Trailhead and Burrow Huts aid station. But it might be more than that if it's looking real bad. If it's going to be a 20-degree day and overcast, it might only be like a mandatory 2-liter refill. But we'll probably likely to go 3 liters anyway, and they can just, if they don't need it, they'll probably tip it over their heads. We can't do much about that. So Yeah, any changes to mandatory gear, we will let you know that. And then there was one other question I wanted to address. Yeah, Jim will be in touch with you about Dunkeld, but that will be Sterling Place and the finish line. And sweeper rolls, that was it. So if you're a sweeper, you're getting to an aid station when they're packing up, you'll be able to come back to Halls Gap likely with that aid station crew as they come back to Halls Gap. But there may be some sweeping rolls that we do need to coordinate with you specifically how to access the start of your role, for example, up at Mount William. Yeah, there's always going to be a little bit of trying to problem solve shift lifts for sweepers. And that's one of the main reasons why we only have 4 sweeping rolls for the entire 100 miles. Like, they're all long because we don't want to have to organize 12 different drop-offs and pickups along the route. But yeah, we'll work with sweepers if they need us to help them get to places. But yeah, if you're finishing, we'll be able to get a lift back with the aid station crew, say from Mount William, for example. Yeah.
We'll wind it up soon. There's probably some people who are scratching their heads around what's this Sterling Place. So Sterling Place is a community hall down in Dunkeld that we've added this year as I suppose a meet point and a bit of a crew point. So what we're acknowledging here is there's an enormous amount of crew that are lurking around for a really extended amount of time, waiting for their participants to finish or in between different aid station segments. And because we're turning off crew access to a lot of the southern aid stations because of the congestion at the trailheads, it's a spot for them to just call home. So they can chill out there. There'll be a pile of noodles. There'll be hot drink making sort of facilities. And so it's just a place to be as a bit of a base and a communal hub. And that's where the shuttle buses will be coming to and from throughout the night and throughout the days, servicing those southern areas. So that's what Sterling Place stands for. We still want the energy over that finish line. And I think with Sarah Longcore and Sally Beggs putting their local energy into that southern Dunkeld sort of precinct throughout the course of the weekend, I don't think we'll struggle having that energy. There's a question from Chops. If you're staying at Stony Creek, are we driving ourselves to the A station? So, yeah, so that yes, except for the case of those 4 A stations we covered at the start. So Mount Zero, Gar, Mount Difficult, and also the function of the Mount Difficult Ridgeline water point. So those 4 rolls, you'll have a shuttle that will take you into those positions. But for everywhere else, you're permitted and encouraged to go to those aid station points.
And carpooling is obviously better,
yeah,
if you can, but not mandatory. That is basically all the questions. So I think that's good for now. And anything else? No. If there's any, we'll have that WhatsApp. Throw some questions in there. But otherwise, all excellent. Let's keep really good energy. And if you can try and take photos when you're in positions or comment when you're in position and things like that, that just helps Julie's role enormously, our role enormously. So no one's sitting in sort of anxiety. But a big thank you to everybody. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop recording now.